everyone. Thank you so much for joining Insight into Wellness. My name is Alexandra Greenberg, and I am the owner of Green Tree Ayurveda. Today, I'm so excited to talk with Evan Dumas, and we are going to be discussing the topic, It's Okay to Feel Lost. Evan works in the space between mental health, therapy, and stand-up comedy. He speaks to groups large and small about the heavy stuff with humor and lightness. His aim is to help workers everywhere cope with the occupational hazards of burnout and compassion fatigue. By addressing systemic issues, both internal and internalized, he helps people better understand their relationships to themselves and their work. Thank you so much for joining me, Evan.
Oh, thank you so much for having me this morning.
Yeah, well, I first saw you speak at Creative Mornings, and it really piqued my interest, this idea of being lost and being okay with that, because as I work with my clients, I always like to start with a place of being okay with self, being okay with where you are and stepping forward through that. And that's why I really wanted to talk with you and really wanted to kind of peel back some onion layers on that and also just get to know you, which is the whole reason I have this series. So I like to start off with a question most times that basically dives into, where did working with holistic health start for you? Was it a childhood? Did your family embrace it? Was it, older? Where did that start for you?
Man, that is such a wonderful question. I think my interest was definitely piqued. I went to college and I got a degree in computer science because I was good with computers and I was very much an introverted nerd. And then I realized it was soulless and there was no human element to it, and I cared about the human element. And so I was like, okay, psychology is the way, but I was not very good at it. My life had been spent bouncing back and forth between this cognitive world and this humane world. And I thought, I need to really combine the two and find a way that I can exist and help in the way that's appropriate for me. And so it was like, I've had my own personal dealings with mental health, and my friends have, and other things. And I found what's really helped the most for me is to have a sense of humor about it. And it's not the end all be all. Like, there's still a lot of work and a lot of practice and things. But as terms of like an avenue towards vulnerability and acceptance and just getting through life, and like, how do you deal with a bunch of despair? Laugh at it. It's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So it's been a slow build, and I have to say I'm not still fully developed. I'm still very much on a path of figuring this out and just seeing where it leads me.
Yeah, part of what is so attractive to what you're doing is this, mental health humorist, which is actually when I saw you, I'd asked a question about humor, and I wanted to get into this later, but I feel like it's coming up now of this, playing with humor in health. And I have done it, I've read about it, this idea of humor. And so how did you bring that into your healing? When did you find a space and how do you find space for humor?
Oh, lovely question. I'd say my approach is very much one from a place of playfulness. I always valued being playful as a kid. So many like inventiveness with toys and telling stories. And I find just a sense of play is really lacking and really healing and really helpful. And really sort of like my reframing isn't even so much around the word healing so much as reconnecting with our humanity and getting that sense of self. And for many of us, that is incredibly healing. And so where I got that sense of humor was even as a kid, I read books by curmudgeons that were really like sarcastic and dark and perfectly funny in a creepy way. And I'm like, that helped me so much.
Yeah.
And whenever I tried to help my friends, it was always through the use of humor. Like, if I can make someone laugh, I can't make someone happy. I can't fix their problem or day, but I can at least make them feel absurd and like point out the weirdness of everything that's going on, which is how I see it. I don't know if that entirely answers your question. There's just so much to talk
I
about,
know,
but
I know. And there is some science behind having a smile. And
oh
even if
yeah,
you're feeling so down and so out and you just smile, there's something that happens to the body that releases happiness, releases
oh yeah.
chemicals that change the brain.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. And there's actually really good research on humor as an intervention, where like therapists or other people will use humor with their clients, and they'll see if it reduces or increases like sense of agency or sense of self or other things. And it's been shown to have at least a positive effect in some aspects of people's lives, depending on how treatment resistant they are. But it's very not studied. It's really hard to say like, oh, use humor, this will make people laugh. Like there's no formula for it.
Yeah. Is there a point where you find humor doesn't work?
Oh, uh, that is such a good question. I would think it's matters in the delivery and reading the audience. Like humor is a way to connect with people, and humor has to speak to some shared understanding that isn't being spoken to. And so if that understanding isn't shared, say like if someone around you tells an off-color joke that reveals that they're a racist and you're like, this isn't funny, you think I'm in on this with you, this is awful, it's a huge point of like, whoa, deep disconnection there. Or if you tell a joke and someone is grieving and the joke dives them further into their grief rather than make them relieved from their grief. Humor is like, it's this very delicate, like, are you going to ride the fine line between what's appropriate and what's not? But more not from the sake of insulting or demeaning, because humor can be very nasty and biting, but humor can also be really light and absurd and playful. So it's really the use of it. A lot of people will defend themselves by saying, oh, it was just a joke. When you're like, no, you were exposing some deep, nasty thing that you mean. I'm sorry. So there's times when it's definitely not helpful in how it's used. It's challenging, and I'm still not great at it. I say I work in the space between stand-up comedy because I am not a stand-up comedian by any means.
So to go back to you,
Mm.
one thing that I have noticed is your sense of breath and your sense of before you start things. I watched a few of your videos
Oh.
and even the zines that you create. And I will link to all of these things on my website. There's so much space in between the letters, so much space, so much breath, so much just silence. Is that something that's conscious to you, or is that just something that comes out of you simply?
Oh, yeah. Um, I'd like to say it's conscious and take credit for it. It might not be. It's I
It's calm.
it's
Calm.
okay, it's a response to my personal style of organization, which is messy piles, and I'll clean my desk by dumping the things into the drawers, and I have a clothes mountain and such. But when I make things, I want to have a lot of white space. I want to have a lot of calmness. I want to like be able to stare out into the vistas of nothing and relax.
Mm.
And so when I'm talking, um, I have been giving talks for about 5 years now, on and off. I still say and things like that. But I try to start my talks by taking a breath and find that if I can collect my thoughts by breathing rather than saying, hang on a second, I'm collecting my thoughts, that slows me down. Um, and the biggest thing I ever notice for myself when I try to build my own self awareness of my own anxieties and stressors is when I stop breathing,
Mm-hmm.
because it's the first warning sign to me. Other people have tense shoulders or back, etc. But I'll be like, oh, wait a minute, I'm not breathing. Okay. So I guess inadvertently, the breath is really important to me. And I've been consciously, not consciously, making it part of my work. But yeah, thanks for that observation.
Yeah, well, I practice yoga and have taught Pilates, and breath and also Ayurveda is everything. The prana, the life, the breath, and having it be such a relaxing thing and also a thought collector
Mm.
really has to do with helping people, or people helping themselves calm down, realize where they are, stop for a moment. And you even have an acronym, STOP, when you as we start to get into this idea of being lost. And I just think it works so well, this calming, collect your thoughts, stay where you are. And I just wanted to kind of step into this idea of being okay with being lost, taking that breath, taking that moment. Can you kind of step into how you got into this idea of being okay with being lost, and how you started to help people?
Oh, definitely. About being lost, it's definitely a new reframe for me as I've done work on burnout and compassion fatigue, mainly around people who do service work like nurses and librarians and people who work with the public in their relationship with their jobs. And I was asked to give a talk on the topic of being lost. And I realized that's sort of what I've been speaking to all along. And then it's also been the biggest project for me in my own life of dealing with feelings of being lost and community and should I have a plan. And the thing that's been the most help for me is really not to notice and to try to find a plan, but really to notice this false sense of urgency and
Mm.
this false sense of, I need a plan now. I'm so uncomfortable with this. When in reality, I just needed to be comfortable with being lost. And so notice, for me, I've always been aware of all these pressures that aren't mine, that are society's call to get joy from accomplishment and productivity, and I'm measured by what I do and my plans and my class status, and rejecting those and going, oh, I can just be calm first and then take care of the other stuff. I don't know how to be calm, but I'll work on it.
Mm-hmm.
So noticing being lost and being okay and accepting that, like the more I push it away, it's like if you have an angry feeling and you try to choke it back, you're only going to get more angry, or if you're sad, etc. Like choking back doesn't work on anything. Maybe a burp, but uh, being lost, yeah, just normalizing it and saying like, wait, everyone says this is bad, but what if it wasn't bad? What if it was okay? What a weird concept.
I think that is so important, taking ideas that normally wouldn't even be looked at and flipping it around and saying, what if it is okay? What if it is
Yeah.
okay that you are frustrated and upset and that you are not able to move on in that moment?
Mm-hmm.
Just to be, and I think you said uncomfortable uncertainty, which I really am attracted to that, because
Yeah.
it's everything. It's
Yeah.
that being okay in that moment, taking that breath, which I almost, I teach a lot of this pranayama, this like breathing, and there's connections to our movements and breath that
Mm-hmm.
can calm us. And so almost that breath being the first step towards being okay in that moment. Excuse me. So yeah, that uncomfortable uncertainty. Where do you find people leaning into that, or do you find people leaning into that?
That's that's so I used to ask people to lean into it more as a part of my workshops, to really dive into that uncertain, grief-filled space of the uncertainty of life, etc. And people got real deep and people got real teary, and I was not prepared to bring them back out of it. And I went, oh no, this isn't appropriate. This isn't my place.
Mm.
And so I would say that my work is more like the precursor to leaning into it, of like, here is, I'm going to make you curious about this. I'm going to make you just maybe think that this is a possibility, and on your own time, really dive in and lean and see what this would be like. Because I try to just give folks a taste of, well, maybe you can sit with your feelings, or maybe it's okay to feel X, Y, and Z, or maybe this whole feelings are uncomfortable is just some bad rule that we're living by, and that we should switch that. So I want to really promote that curiosity before the leaning into it. I've moved away from doing one-on-one work, and I mostly do this big groupie talks work because it's more my comfortable space.
Mm.
Because it's uncomfortable for me to like lean in with someone. Like doing that for 8 hours a day would wreck me.
I'm like all in. I'm like, yeah.
Nice, good. I'm glad the world needs you. So yeah, I would say that I want to promote that leaning in. I do it on my own time for myself, but I want to just start with a place of curiosity rather than forcing someone who's so far away from the concept of feeling this uncertainty to do it in the moment, to like maybe little manageable bites,
Oh yeah.
real slow.
Yeah. Have you heard the term Kaizen?
Oh yeah.
It's a huge part of the process. These tiny, tiny steps that when you look back, you can really see a full process and a full change or part of a change. But it's those small, seemingly insignificant, but actually are huge.
Oh
Huge.
yeah, incremental change is how we do it. We don't, I mean, some people sell all their things and move to Maui, but I don't think that's affordable for the rest of us. So
Not all of
let's
us. No.
yeah.
Um, when you're working with a group, is there a question that you lead in with, or is it basically, hi everyone, let's get comfortable with uncomfortability?
Ooh, uh I try not to tell people what exactly
What's gonna happen?
the goal is going to be. I'll start by telling people the summary of what, like, how, like, sharing awareness and acceptance, or it's reframe it based on the group that I'm working with. But I'm like, if they only take out one thing, like I start with the breath, but if you only take away some things of how to like fix compassion fatigue and burnout, it's through sense of connectedness, through sharing. It's a sense of awareness and acceptance of your own life, and then it's a sense of self-kindness, and we get, or self-compassion, and we get into exploring all those topics. But I don't talk necessarily about like, oh yeah, you're uncomfortable and lost, let's feel that. Like, people would be like, oh, I'm putting up my boundaries right now.
Yeah.
Let's just start zoning out.
Well, there is a sense to shock factor.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
one, I think, great shock factor is your talks. I don't know the exact title, Fucks to Give.
Yes.
But
Have you ran out of fucks to give?
yeah, and so for anyone who hasn't seen that, which I'm guessing most of you, there's a conversation about fucks to give. And can you let us
Yes.
know what the fucks to give
Uh,
means?
yes. Uh, so I, the correct term is to operationalize, is to take a concept and make it quantitative and numbers based. And so I used fucks not as anything sexual or romantic, but as a unit of care. So like it's one little tiny unit of care, and you only have so many. And so you run out before the end of the day. And so a fuck is how much energy you have to give to things. It's a spoons analogy, but way more goofy and sweary. If
Well,
you know.
I love that because
So good.
I really think that in this day and age where there's so much information, there's so much coming at us, that sometimes we need a word or we need something to like pop us into paying attention and to really thinking. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that that talk and using fuck and using that as, qualitative thing is in itself like a therapy session, or it's in itself just this opportunity to really kind of like see something just from a different angle. a word that we use that really pops us in, to paying attention.
Oh, I fully agree. I love swearing, and I feel it's the forbidden language of emotional expression, that if you can get people to swear, they're all empowered. They're like, yeah, I'm doing the not wrong, naughty thing, but it feels good.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't done as much because I work a lot with small government and other people who do not like swearing in groups.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does shake things up.
I speak mostly to parents,
Mm.
and I speak mostly to identity and finding self through self-esteem and self-love and self-care routines.
Mhm.
And I think it's so important to start, again, like I mentioned at the beginning, from a place of positivity when we engage in changing, when we start to change. And so when I work with clients and we're making that change, when I talk about positivity, it's not like you have to be smiling, you have to be ready, keep
Mhm.
that up, ladies. It's not like that. But my work towards feeling positive when you move forward is something that's so sometimes it doesn't seem tangible. It's like how do we get to that place of being okay or feeling okay moving forward? How do you is it like a circle back thing? Is it something it always is a circle back thing to like get to the space of being okay to move forward. But how do you think that what do you think of that feeling positive when you move forward?
Oh my. Positivity definitely has a nasty connotation to me of that cheerfulness, that real saccharine, sugar coated, like smile because you need to smile right now because you can't do anything else.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for me, positivity is that sense of hopefulness. It's like whatever part of you that's unassailable and has like the tiny, smallest glint of hope, even if it isn't like a bright shine of light so much as a tiny piece of glitter you dropped on the ground 10 feet away and you're like, what is it? And so that's the positivity, or at least the thing that is not negative. It's funny, even the word positivity for me gives me goosebumps.
It's not my favorite word.
I
It's
know, it's
not.
amazing. Yeah. It just makes me think of like the positive psychology movement and how selling people happiness is a great way to make a buck, but it's not a great way to make people happy because it's not sustainable. It's this whole panoply of emotions.
So then to redefine,
Mm.
when I work with someone or even with myself,
Mm.
I do think when I want to move through something, if I'm carrying with me, I know that there's challenges, there's trauma, there's things that are not positive, for lack of a
Oh
better
yeah,
word.
yeah. Crazy
And
stuff.
I know that they're coming with, like, I know that they're there, but I don't need to hold on to them to move forward. And I do think to move forward and to be okay with being lost, or be okay with feeling frustrated, or being okay with where I am now, is an important part of moving forward.
Yeah, yeah. I fully agree. It's this like not holding on to, but also not pushing away of that sadness and that grief and that anger, of just like acknowledging it and being like, okay, let's make some space for the other feelings of like positivity or kindness or love or hope. Like you can feel all of that at the same time.
I I really like, if we're going to go back to STOP,
Yeah.
this
Okay.
acronym, and I'll just say what it is really quick so we can move through. STOP is something that, well, you could talk about it too.
Okay.
You invented it, or
Oh no, no,
I
no.
know, I know.
Yes. So I reframed it from the U.S.
Yeah,
Forest Service guide of what to
yeah.
do when you're lost in the woods, because they came up with it probably in like the 40s.
Yeah.
And S stands for stop, like stop doing what you're doing. O stands for observe, like look around you, see if you know any landmarks. Oh, I missed T. We do stop otherwise. T stands for think, of like what got you to this place, where are you. O is observe. P is plan. That's when you think of what your next course of action is. And so I love how the S stands for stop. Like whatever you do, just stop doing what you're doing. Find a place of calm. Panic is your enemy.
Yeah. It's so simple. And I think big change comes from simplicity.
Oh yeah.
And I've used it quite a few times. And even when planning for things or when thinking about my day, I really just wanted to kind of talk about this as we start to wrap up. How often or when have you used this with your clients or with bigger groups? Have people really attached onto it like I have?
Oh, I can't say. I think I've had a lot of feedback of people that they have liked it. That lost talk that I gave was the first time that I brought it up, but I put it into the little handout scenes that I made for people, and it seemed like it was really well liked. I'd like to think it was adapted and used in people's lives. Like any good practitioner, I'm terrible at the things I talk about and give to people as applying to myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so every once in a while, I'm like, oh yeah, I should stop. Oh yeah, that was a thing. But I like it, and I'll still keep using it. It's just, I love, the idea that big change comes from simple things, like elegant things. Complication is not how things work.
And also stop is that moment to breathe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what comes after that, think and observe and plan. And something that you said in the talk was nowhere in there does it say to do anything.
No, it doesn't.
It
No.
doesn't. And you're so right. It doesn't say do anything. So
No.
really just taking that breath, taking a moment to breathe and see and feel. And I think there's a lot of feeling that doesn't happen. We tend to stay up here.
Yeah.
Is a beautiful step towards sinking into where you are and being okay with that.
Yeah. It's very easy to just, when a uncomfortable thought or feeling comes up, to just start doing things and just keep yourself busy, when stopping might mean that you might feel something and it might come up, and that's the right time for it to do that.
Yeah. Well, that was the end of our conversation.
Aw, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Is there your website or anything that any place that people can connect with you?
Oh, sure. They could visit my website. It's eedumas.com. So that's EEDUMAS. I grew up in Midwest America. We did not honor our French roots. So it's Dumas, not Dumas.
Oh.
I know, right? Fancy. I go by Evan Edward Dumas. I tried to bring out all the power, but I don't need to do that. No.
Well, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me. Again, this was Insight into Wellness, and you can re-listen to this and other insights at greentreeayurveda.com/access. And if you or anyone you know is a holistic health leader in your community, I would love to speak with them. You can email me at hello@greentreeayurveda.com. Thank you so much for listening, and talk to you next time.